Hey guys, welcome back to Project Bodybuilding, and today I'm bringing you my recap of the 2024 Mr. Olympia for all the men's divisions. We'll go over men's physique, 212, classic, and of course your open bodybuilding division. We're going to take a look at the top 5s in every division, except for open where we're going to take a look at the top 10. This was quite a weekend with many highs, many lows, and not too much in between, but regardless, we have a ton to cover today, so I don't want to waste any more time with the intro. Here is my recap of the 2024 Mr. Olympia. If you guys like these types of videos, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. Let's start with the 212 division, and let's start with 5th place. In 5th, we had Vitor Oliveira. This guy was actually not in my 5th place. I had Giuseppe Zaccarella in 5th, and many people said that he could have been higher. So I gotta give an honorable mention here to Giuseppe, because although he needs more upper body thickness and has plenty to work on, that structure and his physique as a whole are absolutely the future of the division. This structure with a little more mass is going to compare pretty well to Keon. It's one of the only things in the division that can. But anyway, I do see why Vitor got 5th. Giuseppe's just not thick enough upstairs yet. Vitor had many better body parts, including better back and hamstring, and really good conditioning. I couldn't find too much on Vitor, but I do believe this is his first time in the top 5, but also his Olympia debut as well, so congratulations to Vitor. In 4th was Kareth Basho. This is pretty standard. I think Kareth is eventually going to be able to challenge Keon, and by that I mean 2nd place, because basically he's just a smaller Keon. He has good 212 size and completeness, but he had the best shape in the top 5 besides Keon, so he has that great mix of 212 mass with class. But he needs more detail, especially in the glutes, but this is a guy that is for sure a future investment. Kareth was 4th last year, and like last year, 3rd was once again taken by Angel Calderon. This was pretty standard as well. I thought Kareth could have moved up because he had the better shape, but Angel is pretty big for the division. His 212 does not look like the other guys' 212, but he had more detail in the lower body, especially from the rear. He's big and shredded. The stomach of course left more to be desired as per usual, but this package as a whole was still good enough for 3rd. And taking the 3rd runner-up spot of his career, once a 2-time champion of the division, was Sean Clarita. I have a whole video coming out on Sean very soon, so I'll save most of my thoughts for that, but the gist of it is he got smaller. Now I do think it was on purpose actually. The judges docked him last year for the waist size and waist control, but he went too far in the downsized direction, and he was even smaller than the last time he won back in 2022. But I do think a lot of people are being a little too hard on Sean. He was smaller, but the details were crazy as always, but he was also fighting a losing battle, because taking your 2024 212 Olympia title was now 2-time champion Keon Pearson. This was lights out. No one has Keon's shape and structure, and now that he was sharper, bigger, and really worked on the weak points, it was undeniable this time around. I think there are guys that can catch up like Giuseppe and Kareth, but this is probably going to take a while. So if Keon stays in the 212 division, I think we just witnessed the start of a dynasty. I don't think he should go to open either. He wasn't at the weight cap last year, so I doubt he was this year. So maybe he'll have one more year where he's not really competing with that weight cap. And honestly, he may do better if he is competing with the weight cap, because he will be forced to be in killer condition, which has been his main weakness throughout his career. So for many reasons, Keon was not only lights out here, but he also has a terrific chance of being at the top for several more years. Now let's get into men's physique. I don't really care about the division, but I know you guys do, so I'm very quickly going to give you the top 5. In 5th, we had Ed Van Palmyra. I can't roll my R's. In 4th was Emmanuel Hunter. In 3rd was former Mr. Olympia, Aaron Banks. 2nd, my absolute favorite guy in the division was Ali Bilal. And taking his 2nd title this time around was Ryan Terry. It's hard to repeat in a division like this, and it's very good to see Ryan be able to do so. He's had a very long road to the top, so it's rewarding to see this. And now we have classic physique. Honestly, this was just as exciting as open. This division was rocked to its absolute core this weekend, and the future is wide open. But before we get into that and your top 5, I have 2 honorable mentions. Or in this first guy's case, a dishonorable mention. Wesley Vissers was unable to make the top 5. There were many fans saying that he would be the new guy to take Chris on. Wesley had a good year too, winning the Arnold Classic and the Arnold UK. But at the Olympia, he literally placed worse than last year. He finished 8th. And to be honest, he wasn't much worse than the Arnold. In some ways, he was better. But look, on the Olympia stage, it's different. He is still very subpar in the back pose, his legs are narrow, and a lot of people say he doesn't have the classic shape. Some people say he does, but other people consider him boxy. Now, 8th is a bit interesting. I think that may be a little overkill, so sure, the theory out there that he was overlooked may hold some water, but not much. On no occasion would I ever put him in the top 5 this year, and the judges saw it the same way, placing him firmly outside of it. The second guy I want to mention for good reason is Josema. He was 6th this year, and honestly, he could have been 5th. He was 6th this year, and honestly, he could have been top 5. I remember calling that decision to go from open to classic stupid, but I was wrong. I'm just glad Josema actually delivered. In classic, we have so many hyped up guys and an entire graveyard of wasted potential in this division built off of Instagram hype, but Josema is the only guy in years that lived up to the hype from IG in year 1. And now that brings us to your top 5, and we have a top 5 staple in 5th, Breon Ainsley. He will probably never be lower than top 6 just because he's so consistent, and of course he deserves the respect that comes with being a 2-time champ. Honestly, I really liked his package this year as well. The back was insane as always, but the legs looked a little bigger this time. And with that little help in the balance department, it helped Breon's shape so much. And sincerely, I hope he stays in Classic. Earlier this year, he said he's out and he's going to the 212, but given the improvements this year and him being able to hold on to that top 5 yet again, I don't think he should go to the 212. It's just a waste of time. He'll be top 6 next year at least, and probably the year after that. And you never know, he could be higher, especially after the shakeups this year. Now, this is where the shakeups actually begin. We had one with Wesley and now the new guy Josema, but this is where things really get interesting. In fourth was a 2-time runner-up and Arnold Classic champion, Ramon Dino. Look, I don't think it was the physique that did Ramon in for the most part. Has he been better? Sure. Now that weight cap is Ramon raw. He was 2 kilograms over his weight cap 6 days out. And yeah, he made weight with a pound to spare, but you guys know that he probably had to do everything to get there. There was probably anything from a sauna to not eating, of course. And the weigh-ins were on Thursday, and with the one-day show being on Saturday, that's not a long time for a guy that is so depleted to fill out. And guys at their weight cap like Breon and Ramon have issues looking flat. So yes, was Ramon flat here? Absolutely. The details were not as prominent, and obviously the muscles didn't have the best pop. But his biggest sin here was the sweating. He was fine during his individual routine, but as soon as it was time for the callouts, he started crying through his body. It was really bad, and I believe he was relegated to the second callout because of that, and he got pushed up to the first at finals, but the damage was done. I have to be honest, I still do not agree with this decision, but I see what went wrong for sure. I don't think Ramon is done in this division. I think with there no longer being a cleared standard, he has a definite shot to move back up. I think he can even be Mr. Olympia next year, but I do think at some point he should consider open. It sounds dumb and we hear this floated all the time, but I do think Ramon is actually one of the few that can pull off a decent career there. I wouldn't do it yet. It's been a bad year, and I would say at least wait until next year and see how the division plays out. So Ramon has options. It's just going to be interesting to see what path he takes. And taking the bronze medal 3 years in a row now was Super Saiyan Urs Kalasinski. I don't agree, but he was on this year. He has good potential, but I'm kind of tired of saying that. I don't really like his shape, and his back and arms still need to be better, but I do think this is a sign of things to come if you catch my drift. I really don't have anything more to say on Urs. He looked a little bit better than last year and benefited off of Ramon's mistakes. Now here was an insane surprise. Taking the runner-up spot was Mike Sommerfeld. I first saw Mike in 2021 when I saw him on an Instagram post comparing cbum's front lat spread to Mike's, and I actually really liked Mike's. And he placed top 5 that next year in 2022, but fell down out of the top 5 last year, and now he's second in the world. And he predicted this to a T, honestly. I remember him posting this insane update like a month out, and he called it. He put Josema, Ramon, Wesley, Breon, and Urs on notice, and he said he's going to beat them all. But he said that no one would beat Chris this year, however. It's crazy, but he had the most accurate predictions for this division thanks to his own success and him landing in the runner-up spot. And guys, he even made sure the winner didn't win with a perfect score. That hasn't happened since 2019. Mike has the door wide open for him now, and really, until we go to the Arnold and let the 2025 season play out, he is the favorite to win the Mr. Olympia next year. And in first place, for the last time actually, was Chris Bumstead. And yes, if you haven't heard the news by now and didn't pick up on my hints, Chris Bumstead retired on stage after making himself 6-time champion. No, I don't think he was scared of the incoming competition. I think he could have kept winning for a couple more years at least. But he has a ton of business ventures going on, and he just had his first child, and he's maximized what the sport can do for him. The Olympia needs Chris more than Chris needs the Olympia. And he went out on top, never getting beat once since he started winning. And he won this year pretty clearly. Mike did make it a bit closer, but it was never going to happen. Chris is unbeatable as far as I'm concerned, and that sucks for anyone who wanted to beat him, and now no one else is going to get a chance. But what does this mean for the division? Honestly, there's going to be a massive hole. And I'd be lying if I said I was a little scared. There is no one like Chris at this point in time. The guy had no haters, and of course physique-wise, there was no one who could compare. I honestly think the reason this division is so popular as it is because of Chris Bumstead specifically. He raised this division as much as it raised him, and now they're uncoupling. It will be interesting to see what happens next because it is wide open. Mike has a claim to the throne. Ramon gave Chris runs for his money, kind of. Urs has the personality aspect and good potential, and Wesley has a big structure like Chris. Anything can happen next year, and everything happened this year. What an exciting year for this division. With that, I want to congratulate the top 5, and I want to personally thank Chris Bumstead for his hand in making Classic what it is today. And now it's time for the main event, men's open bodybuilding. This was the 60th Mr. Olympia, and the hype really didn't disappoint as far as how competitive of a show it was. So let's get into it. Rounding out the top 10 was big Akeem Williams. Honestly, maybe a bit overlooked, but when you look at the rest of the top 10, it just kind of makes sense. Where else would you put him? Akeem has had a great year, 4th at the Arnold, 3rd at the Arnold UK, a Toronto Pro win, and a top 10 finish in a stacked Olympia. This has been one of the longest streaks that he's actually been on. Usually he's up and down, but this year was actually pretty even for him. So yeah, maybe slightly overlooked, but but it's the same thing as always. He has an insane front double and side shots, but the rear double sucks, and this time the answer to that equation was 10th. And this next one was definitely one that we were waiting for. In 9th was former Mr. Olympia Brandon Curry. The last time he was out of the top 5 was in 2018, and a lot of his placings are contested by the fans. So we were all kind of wondering, is this the year that Brandon slips, or does he still have those political advantages? Well, his luck ran out for one reason or another. Now, I would wager it really wasn't because of his physique. Look, he was better than in 2022 and in 2023. At minimum, he couldn't have been much worse. And he was 4th both of those years, so he had quite the fall. Basically, what I think happened is with the influx of new talent, the judges felt comfortable finally moving Brandon down. This actually embodies one of the main takeaways from this entire Olympia. The guard has officially been changed. We've been moving in that direction for years. But the 2010s guys are gone, the entire top 6 are all new guys except for Hottie, and even he is kind of new, only making his Olympia debut in 2019. But with Brandon almost out of the top 10, and with guys like Bonak falling out of the top 6 once again, it's clear that we are firmly in a new era. In 8th was Rafael Brandao. This was probably a little surprising to some because he got a lot of hype at the last minute with some crazy updates. And honestly, I don't think he was far off from the updates. From the front and side, he was pretty good, but the back let him down, and that's why we barely saw it during the updates. And this was just at prejudging. He was pretty good then, but at finals he completely fell off. Still, this is his best all-time placing though. If I was Rafa, I'd compete earlier, at Prague or Romania, or one of those shows before 2025 actually starts. So that way I'm qualified early and can grow even more. He's added size, and that's still an issue to some degree, and he needs more back. And when it's time to get on the Olympia stage, he's got to make sure he's peeled. Rafa peeled would probably have been top 6. So if he comes back with a better backside and more detail, especially in the glutes, and doesn't fade at finals, he can leave this 8th place finish in the dust. When I look at him, it's clear that he has just as much potential as anyone else in the top 5. And rounding out a terrific comeback season was William Bonak in 7th. He had a pro win this year, 2 great second place finishes at major pro shows, and now he's 7th at the Olympia. He's not back to full form, but this was still a very good package. And I would say there was one main reason Bonak got placed this high. This guy has the details. The shape is a little wonky, the physique is a little clunky, but he's complete and still has those details galore top to bottom. Honestly, I'm so proud of Bonak. He was really proud of Samson at the end there, and the personality is partly why he's still one of my favorite bodybuilders. And now we have the only placing I disagree with. In 6th was Hunter Labrada. Hunter showed up, and that is not always the case. He took a lot of shit after Italy, but he took it serious and not to heart, and he worked on the things that he needed to bring to be the best Hunter he ever was. I do think he got a little softer at finals. That usually happens, and that probably had something to do with him not getting 5th, but still, Hunter was incredibly impressive. He was pulling that vacuum so the midsection issues were not noticeable, and the peak at prejudging was insane. So with the mass and structure at the forefront, and with his conditioning being on point, he was able to do really well here, and he shut a lot of the haters up. In 5th was Andrew Jacked, and I just want to say, I told you so. I had him in 4th in my predictions, so really I wasn't too far off. And I had him losing in just about every comparison I put him in. The usual problems for Andrew were just still there. He was soft from the back, and the posing needed work. And honestly, more of the poses were off this time around. He seemed pretty off as a whole, probably demoralized after he told everyone that he was going to break hearts this weekend. He wasn't even flexing his trademark abs properly, which is odd because that doesn't make any sense unless you remember the injury that wasn't an injury. Andrew said he got a little tweak, like some trapped air in his abdomen about 1.5 weeks out from the Olympia, and that took him out of heavy lifting and posing for a few days. But his coach, Chris Psycho Lewis, came out and said, no, that's not an issue. He never had an injury. Well, I can't confirm this, but Andrew couldn't flex his abs, and he looked uncomfortable, so really, who's the idiot now? I do want to run to Andrew's defense on one thing though, and say they did him dirty with the music. His music for the posing routine was cut right as he went out for his routine, so they just played that TikTok music, and he basically just hit a couple of shots and walked off. They did this because his music contained swear words, and you know we can't have that. They say this is a family event. Of course, the show with a bunch of oiled up men and women in thongs on copious amounts of drugs has to be catered to a PG audience. I know it's in the rules, but the Olympia should have checked the music before, and honestly, once it's happening, it's a move to stop the guy's routine at the biggest show in the world. Anyway, rant over. TLDR, Andrew didn't live up to the hype, and the Olympia screwed his posing. And one of the most pleasant surprises of the weekend, coming in at 4th place, was Martin Fitzwater. I've had a good feeling about him all year, and he even surpassed my own expectations. This was his first Mr. Olympia, and he was giving guys in the top 3 a run for their money in several shots. He came in bigger than New York and in Detroit, and he came in on. And that was the biggest wild card for him, and he did his homework. With that out of the way, he let his completeness do all the talking. He isn't missing anything. He actually has some fantastic body parts as well. He has great shape, and like I said, he was on, and when he is on, he has some crazy details everywhere. Honestly, I am so glad this happened. I feel so vindicated, and hopefully hopefully I'll be vindicated on my next statement in the not too distant future. I fully believe Martin is a Mr. Olympia at some point in the coming years. You don't place 4th in this lineup on your first go around and not have great potential to win the whole thing. This is so great to see. Martin started this year not even getting an invite to the Arnold. He got his application denied over people like Nextzilla, Horse MD, Justin Rodriguez, and others. And now he's top 4 in the world. And now we have 3rd, and this was one of your biggest surprises just in general. But in 3rd was last year's Mr. Olympia, Derek Lunsford. I know I said Martin had one of the most pleasant surprises of the weekend, but to me, Derek placing 3rd has me just as optimistic for the future. I didn't agree at all with the decision in 2023, and I wouldn't have agreed if he won this year. And it turns out he wasn't even runner-up. I'm being harsh, but it gives me a little bit more hope on the judging criteria. I was kind of blackpilled after Derek won last year, but this was deserved this year, so I'm a lot more hopeful now. Now, in terms of why he placed this low, he just wasn't improved and the same issues were still present. He was soft from the front, top heavy, and sure, the back is still great, but how far can that get you? 3rd, apparently. Probably 4th if we're being blunt. But anyway, I will definitely be waiting to see how Derek shows up next year. I don't anticipate him doing anything else until then. If I were him, I would take the automatic qualification I have and strike while the iron is at least somewhat warm. I'd go all in for next year. The Arnold could wait. If I'm Derek, I think I put all my eggs in one basket at least this year. But I have to be honest, I don't really think he has that big of a chance to get the title back, if he has one at all. And taking a very narrow runner-up spot for the second time was Hadi Chupin. He honestly could have won the show. I really think he could have. It was tied at prejudging, but Hadi kind of faltered a bit in the finals, which is an interesting claim to say the least. But regardless, this was basically Hadi from the 2024 Arnold, just without that extra sting. He was a little bit softer from the back, and that's the main thing I think he left on the table. Other than that, I do see this as a scenario where the winner won more than the loser lost. It wasn't that Hadi was giving up a lot of areas, it was just the winner was more even across the board. Again, it was a tie game, so there were arguments for each guy. I would have been absolutely fine with Hadi. And honestly, he probably still has a chance to win next year. He won 2 Arnolds this year and was runner-up. It actually makes it very exciting because everyone in this year's top 3 now has 1 Olympia apiece, and this was not at all a runaway for this year's champion. And speaking of, your winner of the 2024 Mr. Olympia was Samson Dauda. If there is one explanation for this, it's one word: balance. He just had the best mix. Not the best elements a lot of the time, but across the board, averaging everything together, he had the greatest sum of parts. Now sure, I don't know if this is the call I would make. I have a full video coming out on my in-depth analysis, so stay tuned. But when you look at Samson, it does make sense. I'm not baffled like I was when Derek won. So even though I may end up disagreeing with the call, I still understand it. And I do think the judges were looking to set a standard with this call. As his former coach Milos would say, it's hashtag bodybuilding. He's not beating a lot of guys at any one thing, but it's all there, and the most important factor Samson has on top of all of it is shape. I've been saying this all year. If the IFBB wants shape to be at the forefront of open bodybuilding, don't pick Derek, pick Samson. He's more balanced. And that turned out to be the case this weekend. And he's already looking to the future as well, as he is committed to the 2025 Arnold. And you know, a bunch of other guys are going to want a shot at that huge payday as well, so it's going to be a good show. But let's take it one step at a time. After all the Samson took this year, from leaving Milos, which was justified by the way, to then having his wife coach him, to then going to Kuwait, then pulling out of that, and then doing that last minute show in France, everyone was on this guy's case. But at the end of the day, what most of us said actually came true. Me and many others said if Samson Dauda ever pulled it all together, he's Mr. Olympia. And that's exactly what happened. I want to congratulate the full open top 10, and of course I want to congratulate the Nigerian Lion, the 2024 Mr. Olympia, Samson Dauda. Well, that's going to do it for today's video. That's my recap of all the men's divisions for the 2024 Mr. Olympia. Now, there were a lot of things I couldn't go over in depth or cover at all in this video. So Jake from Jake Ultimate Fitness and I sat down and had a super long and in-depth discussion about what we thought about the Mr. Olympia. We covered everything from the stage production and all that back-end stuff, and of course we gave our more long-winded analysis on the whole event. That's going to be dropping very, very soon, so be on the lookout if you want to get my full thoughts on this event outside of this recap. And if you guys like this video and want to see more of my Olympia wrap up, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. And if you guys want to support the channel even further and are in need of some high quality supplements, be sure to head over to Arms Race Nutrition. Then at checkout, use my code Project10 for 10% off your entire order. That's code Project10 at armsracenutrition.com. And finally, with all that said, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.
Gotta get that Lexia.